just having an attitude of generosity that gets you thinking beyond just yourself.
Hello and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. I'm Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be inspired to live your life fully, to take ownership of your time, your schedule, and your life, but most importantly, learn and grow and develop personally and professionally. Myself and others are going to share life lessons that we've learned through leadership, through heartache, through pain, through struggles, and we'll be sharing some success stories with you as well. Super eager for you to dive in, learn, and grow. And once again, just take ownership of your life today. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I am joined by Nancy Griffin. You are going to want to turn up the volume, reduce any distractions. Nancy is a mover and a shaker, and I can't wait to tell you a little bit about her. She is a connector and influencer. She attributes her success to personal courage, determination, and joy. When focusing on women's health and wellness, hence creating women worth and wellness. Nancy enjoys every opportunity to inspire and inform women about their personal health and wealth, net worth and self-worth, philanthropy, and legacy, so that women feel fabulous, generous, joyful, confident, and on top of their game every single day. Nancy, you're speaking my language. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Jenny. Delighted to be here.
So before we get started and you share all the tips and the goodness with our listeners, I really want them to understand a little bit more about who you really are. So tell us what stage of life you are in, where do you live, and something else unique about you.
Okay, well, I'm definitely in the over 70 crowd, heading towards 80, which is amazing. And I feel like I'm probably about either 23 or 47. You know, pick a number. I can't believe I'm as old as I am. But on the other hand, the one thing that I've learned is the longer you live, the more life experiences you have, and the more fabulous people you meet with whom you interact.
I love it. And you are close to your 80. I would never see that in a million years. Just the way that you're talking, the energy, the website, you are like firecracker. I love it.
Well, me either. I mean, it's unbelievable. I was on a podcast yesterday and with really, really high-powered women business owners. And the theme and the thrust was, how are you going to live and enjoy your life over 100? So rock and roll. Talk about rock and roll. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And we know with AI and all sorts of new technologies emerging and supporting us that it is not impossible.
No, it's not. I mean, I've got really great genes. So my grandmother on my dad's side lived to 82, and she just had like a stroke, but she was totally healthy, not on any medication. She was living on her own, cooking, driving. Right. My mom's side of the family too, my great-grandfather lived to be 99, no major health issues, 87, my great-grandmother. And I knew both sets of great-grandparents as well. And so I'm sure my mom will make it close to 100. And yeah, I may make it there too. So it sounds scary to some people, but as you said, the more you live, the more experiences and the more people that you meet. And that's amazing. I can't wait to, continue living my life fully. So Nancy, tell us a little bit about how you got into the work that you're doing today.
Okay, well, as I do these podcasts, I'm finding that there are a lot of women who are jumping from corporate into the entrepreneurial world, which is amazing. And that's exactly what happened to me. My first career was with Procter & Gamble in Canada, and I was one of the first female managers, which was a big, big deal. Not only was it a big deal to be a first female manager, but I was promoted from non-management into management, and that is kind of a no-no. And it's hard to believe that this has happened in a lifetime where some people can relate to that. But, of course, you are promoted and your life is enhanced and away you go, but then the glass ceiling kicks in. I had a boss, and this is one of my key learnings that I share with people. Pay attention to from whom you take advice. My VP did not have one entrepreneurial bone in his body. He also would not let me go on business travel because I was a mom. I mean, really, that was the reality. And that was obviously a career-limiting scenario. So after I tried to leave a couple of times, I finally decided I'm out of here. I was 39 years old. And when you're 39, you think probably you're going to be dead within about 6 months. 39 is one crazy year. And so I left and I ran politically because we had an incident in our community that I had just gone on the board of our community association, and all of a sudden, and they had put me in charge of community outreach, not knowing that this huge disaster would happen. But to my point earlier about the longer you live, the more you know, the more experiences you have, all of a sudden I'm front and center in the community with an awful incident. But what I brought into play was a lot of what I had learned at Procter & Gamble. And when things like that happen, it's no one person's fault. It's the whole interaction and intersection of how all these different groups behave in this community. And so I came flying out and thought, if I can present myself exceptionally well for this nomination for a federal party, then I will have gotten my point across. And that was my goal. So I did. It was fabulous. Our daughter at the time was playing girls hockey. And so we had done a lot of, cheerleading for them with all the tournaments. So these girls that I knew well, they cheered me on and did all sorts of, well, of course, the lady who did win wants to recruit them for her campaign. Well, they're, no, we're not political. We're just cheering Nancy on. So anyway, that was my launch out of Procter & Gamble and launch into the community. And one other thing that I learned is in corporate, there's a structure. You know what the power structure is. In the community, there's no power structure. Everybody has a voice, and you've got to pay attention to everyone's voice. And that's how you learn to build it out and make good things happen.
Yeah, so I love that, Nancy. I don't know if you know this, but I'm an entrepreneur. I actually own a music school, and I started it 10 years ago. We're going to be celebrating our 10th year anniversary in January, and I worked for corporate and then it's for the for-profit and nonprofit sector. And then I started my own company, and, we've had a really great run. And then there was a time where I was kind of out of the business doing what I needed to do. And then I popped back into the business and then out and then back in. And we are at a state right now where I'm analyzing and restructuring a lot of different things. And it's really easy to point fingers and say, oh, but you didn't do this, or this wasn't the standard, and all of those things. But at the end of the day, it comes back to me, and it comes back to that leadership and that ownership as well. And we all are a team. So how do we work together to rebuild and restructure? And that takes a lot of grit, determination, but also the owner taking ownership to everything that has gone wrong. And once again, we do have a community, so everybody does have a voice, which makes the work powerful and fun as well. And entrepreneurship is definitely very challenging at times, but it does have a lot of highs and lots of great rewards. So I'm always encouraging everyone to do entrepreneurship, and whether you're still working in corporate, maybe start something on the side that you're passionate about that could potentially be your career in the future. But I do believe that a lot of things, or a lot of reasons people don't move forward with that, is because that's self-belief, or someone has not gave them the opportunity, or no one has believed in them and said, you can go and do this. And then there is a sense of your boss is always going to keep you in that one place because you're so great in that one place too. So, I'm really excited for you to share all of your wisdom with us as well. So I speak a lot about love languages in the workplace and then outside of the workplace too. And we've incorporated that into a lot of the work that we do. How are you incorporating love languages with the work that you're doing with the women?
Well, okay, so I left and I was running the community in every which way you can imagine. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to get a job out of this community, because the more you did, the more they wanted you to do. And so I had done a lot of outplacement consulting when I was at Procter & Gamble. Met this woman who had been outplaced, was given a bag load of money, and went looking for a broker to help her invest in, what do I do with this? And found one huge male-dominated industry. So she's the one who said, Nancy, I don't understand why you want to do outplacement consulting. She said, I've just run into this wall, and I think you would be perfect as a wealth advisor. Speak with my boss. Met with her boss. He and I hit it off. And he said, okay, well, you've got to get some licenses before you can start in the business. So go get yourself licensed. So take the courses, pass the tests, get the credentials, and then come back. So I did. And it's like, okay, so we're going to train you how to be effective in this role, but we're not giving you any clients. You've got to go find your own clients. And this was 1992. And that was just when women were women like this woman had wealth to invest. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to focus on women, not exclusively, but primarily. So this is what I did. As I met with these women, I found out that they had a disproportionate amount of responsibility pertaining to health and wellness in their families. They couldn't get beyond that because they've got parents they've got to look after, they've got kids, they've got staff, they've got themselves. So I decided I would partner with not-for-profit, health-related organizations that focused on women. And we know that the leading cause of death for women is heart disease, not breast cancer, but we also know that the symptoms of heart disease for women are very different than they are for men. And the ones that we're most familiar with are the ones that pertain to men, because most of the research, heart and stroke, has been done on men. Of course, that's all changing as time unfolds, but I would invite these women to hear from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I would charge them a nominal amount, $25 or $50, because that then builds into their wealth plan. They're now seeing the benefit of a charitable donation, which enhances their net worth. Obviously, the more you give, the more it enhances your net worth. But also, if you're in a position to give, it enhances your own self-worth. So you can see how this was built up over time. In Toronto, we have this amazing hospital called Women's College Hospital, which is over 100 years. Again, the women who started it, the doctors, pioneers in their day, did a lot of work with them. And then fast forward, now focusing on philanthropy and legacy planning, because women are stewarding more and more wealth all the time, both wealth that they're earning, but also wealth that they're now inheriting. And how much do they understand about the power of that wealth?
Mm-hmm. Remarkable work that you're doing. Well, if we were to be, which we are women, a lot of our listeners are women, if we were to start thinking about our worth, and let's just talk about our wellness as well, what are some things that we can start thinking about or considering as we move forward?
Okay, well, first of all, and I think you mentioned this earlier, we're each our own best asset. And if you want to protect an asset and really have it be the best that it possibly can be, what would you do? What should you do? And what I recommend both for your wealth as well as your health is that you have a trusted advisor. You have a person who has the credentials and the professionalism, but more importantly, you want that person to have your back. You want that person to really care about you. And often people say, well, how do I find, what is a trusted advisor? And how do I find a trusted advisor? A trusted advisor in the wealth scenario will be someone who will have anticipated health challenges going forward and make sure that from a wealth standpoint, you're protected. For example, if you're motoring along, you've got a great career going, and all of a sudden you're stricken with cancer, not necessarily breast cancer, but any cancer. That wealth advisor should have anticipated that possibility and have protection in place so that you're not going to have to take all of your funds or get an extra mortgage on your home to make sure that you can continue with your lifestyle. I share an example. I had a good friend who was staying with us a month or so ago, and she spends most of her time away in the wintertime. And she said, I've got an upcoming Zoom event with my wealth advisor, who I know. I know her well, and I know him as well. And she said, I would really, really like you to listen into the conversation. He won't know that you're there. I know that you're there, but I just want that second opinion from a distance. Well, I was so impressed. I mean, talk about a trusted advisor. He knows her exceptionally well. He knows her idiosyncrasies, her sensitivities. And he told her, he said, and of course, when she goes away and the markets are through the roof or, all over the place, that can create a lot of anxiety and a lot of lack of sleep. He said, I've got 3 years set aside for your monthlies. So in other words, you don't need to worry. And every year I will make sure it is 3 years. And then he talked her through profits that he has taken in her portfolio and other things that he's going to be purchasing as a result. So she's fully aware of what the movement is in the portfolio. But he also has given her a huge level of confidence that everything is in perfect order. She then wanted to withdraw a large sum of money. And is this possible? I've got some things that I want to purchase. He said, no problem. So took out a big lump sum, tickety-boo. So at the end of the conversation, I declared myself and said, that is so, so, so impressive. So impressive, because I know she's got the peace of mind that she needs, but also she knows that she's got a person who not only has all the credentials and experience, but has her back. And that's really what a trusted advisor is. Same thing in the health scenario. You know, who's your doctor? Who's your family health team? You need to have that reassurance that your health is being looked after to the best that it possibly can be. And a good question for that health advisor is to say, what else might I be looking at doing to make sure that I obviously get to over 100?
Yeah. So I love that you had said, oh, this would be a good question. What are some questions that we can ask, whether it's the wealth advisor or the health advisor, that would help us if we're searching for one?
Well, in the wealth scenario, often women won't ask because they're embarrassed to declare what they don't know. And sometimes what you don't know comes out in the question. Going back to you're your own asset, it's up to you to ask those questions. Ask those questions. You know, I've been on these podcasts and people will say, well, what is a good investment today? Like what? Well, in both of those scenarios, you know, if you go to a new medical person, the first thing that they want is blood work. They want to get a read on who are you, what is your scenario, so that they can give you their best professional advice. Same thing with a wealth advisor. First order of business with a new wealth advisor or your current wealth advisor is that they know their client exceptionally well. And if they haven't done that due diligence, then they are at risk of losing their licensing, because that is the most important thing. So that person will ask you questions to make sure they've got a read on who you are. But that's when you ask them your questions. Based on what you're seeing and what you're hearing, what are your recommendations? And once they give you their recommendations, then you say, well, why do you feel that that's a most appropriate thing for me? And is that something that I would stick with for the next, 5 years, 6 months, whatever? Or is this ever changing? So that robust dialogue is so crucial in order to maximizing your ability to be the very best you can be from both a health standpoint and a wealth standpoint.
So Nancy, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking in my head, personal financial statement, having all of that information outlined, figuring out like where are all the accounts, where are all the passwords, getting that situated. And I don't know if everyone really has those things. My husband and I just went through that process because we did the will, we did a trust, and all the things that we did, which can be very, very expensive. I think it ended up costing us like $7,500. I mean, we've got a binder stacked. And so if anything were to happen, we are now kind of taken care of. But we did that with an attorney. We necessarily didn't do that with a wealth advisor. So in that circumstance, what would you suggest would be the next step for us?
Well, both. And also, Jenny, this is what people often say in case something should happen. What you need to do is reframe that and say when something will happen. Because guess what? We're smart people. We know that one day something will happen. And if that scenario could play into my reality, am I protected? And if I'm protected, am I protected to what extent? So all of those things are key. A wealth advisor will give you advice, but a wealth advisor is not an attorney. So you need to have both. And they need to know who one another is. Because, if the wheels fall off, you want to make sure that they're able to connect to, it's like eating a balanced diet. They all feed off one another and they all enhance one another. And professionally smart women will make sure that they are engaging with both.
100%. So if you are listening, definitely want to get your personal financial statement in order. You can access forms like that from your bank or probably from a wealth advisor. I'm sure they have it online as well. And that gives you a really great picture of currently where you are. And then we can then move forward and say, okay, where do we want to be in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years? And you can have these conversations with your spouse or with your family. And I really believe that kind of helps with guiding where you're going and what you're going to be doing. Like, where are you going to be making future investments? Where are you going to be maybe buying a house in the future? Where do you want a vacation? what organizations do you want to give? So those are the things that we're doing right now. And we've been doing those because we have bought properties and we've started businesses, and you always need a personal financial statement when you're going to get a loan from a bank.
Right.
How regular do you suggest people review those personal financial statements?
I would do it every 6 months. With Zoom, it's very easy to do. You can access your own accounts so you see where things are at, but getting that professional reinforcement takes like a half an hour at the most. This call that I referred to, I think it was no more than a half an hour. And she could see all of her stuff online. So it isn't as though he's sharing things that she doesn't have access to already. But she really wants to know, given all of my wealth, how are you working to support my lifestyle? She's not going to do her own dental work. She's not going to be the investment person. This is why she's engaged with a trusted advisor who is a true professional. One other tip that I've shared a lot of, and it kind of refers back to people moving from corporate to the entrepreneurial world. When you're with a corporation, you more likely than not will have a good benefits package. What I always recommend is that you've got your own benefits separate from corporate. Let those corporate benefits be an enhancement. Because if you're there for 20 years and now all of a sudden you want to get benefits personally, they're going to be a whole lot more expensive, and your health may not be 100% the way it was 20 years ago when you first started with that company. So keep that in mind. Always be paying attention to your whole personal scenario, even though you're working with a corporation. And sometimes with a corporation, you can transition those corporate benefits into personal ones, which then can be an enhancement to what you already have.
Right. So when you say the personal benefits, so I've done corporate, they've done matches, and, I've had all those benefits as well. And then obviously moved into business ownership as well. And we only have so many full-time employees, and they have to opt into certain things and things like that. But when you say have your personal benefits package, can you explain what that means? Like, where do we go to get that? What's the common practice?
Well, benefits will be life insurance.
Okay.
They will be, critical illness, disability insurance, dental benefits, health benefits, all of those. All of those are your personal benefit support package to support your health and dental, and obviously vision too. And then your whole life insurance and critical illness, all those sorts of things. People who are really, really, really smart and astute know the benefit of insurance. And it's interesting because as a wealth advisor, when you start to build out a wealth plan and you start to introduce insurance and all the variable and sundry that exist in all the different kinds, they kind of look at you like, oh my goodness, here we go. Going to be sold life insurance or, whatever. Well, a smart wealth advisor will have anticipated future scenarios and build that into your wealth plan so that at any given point in time, if anything should happen to you or premature death of your spouse, that you are covered. I actually had two couples that were both extremely professional. It was an interesting scenario because this was something that was really anxious for them. And that was, what happens if I die prematurely and my spouse lives on, and then there isn't enough wealth to support that person's lifestyle? And they were insistent. They were both professionals, and in both couples' cases, there would have been plenty of wealth, but who knows what the future holds. So what I put in place for both of them was a joint and first to die life insurance policy. Well, then the conversation was really interesting because individuals have their preferences in terms of which organizations they want to support from a philanthropic standpoint. And I remember this one couple saying, okay, well, you didn't really like that organization, but that is a priority for me. So if I do die first, will you make sure that there are dollars directed? But those are the kinds of conversations you need to get into because something will happen. We just don't know what and when. And a smart person will anticipate scenarios and, put support in place in the case that something does happen.
Are you looking to enhance your relationship with yourself? If so, get the Stroke It Guide. My book is available on Amazon and on my website. Not only is my book going to help you with your personal journey with yourself, but it's also going to help you with the relationships of other stakeholders in your life. For instance, your spouse or partner, your employer, your employees, your friends, or your family members. And of course, because the title, there is a chapter for your pleasure, which is the last one, in the bedroom. The book offers lots of great tools and resources. There's a lot of great downloads, and it features many of my podcast guests, and they have thousands of downloads and resources that are worth a lot of money. So you're going to want to get my book today. You can buy that on Amazon or on my website, and you can change and take ownership of your life today with one simple click.
So I know that you're talking about how you're planning this with your spouse, and if one spouse dies before the other spouse. Let's talk about divorce. How does this all play out if you were to get divorced?
Okay, well, what about Melinda French Gates? And what about Mackenzie Scott? I mean, they're definitely divorced, and as a result of their divorces, they were both given bagloads of money. And of course, they're playing it through. And divorce is a reality more often than not. And so yesterday I was on a podcast talking about joint accounts. And, the word trust comes into play in so many different places. And you really need to know who that spouse is, to the point that you are confident that having a joint account is a smart thing to do. I shared another example of neighbors that we had in Toronto, both professionals. One was a dentist, the other one was an engineer and a VP role in a corporation. They had a line of credit on their house. He ended up accessing that line of credit, depleted it completely, and bought himself a new home for the new woman that he was going to be with. She was just totally aghast. She was so taken aback that this could happen to her, a very smart person, that it took her a long time to recover. It took her a very long time. They had two beautiful daughters. So at any given point in time, you've got to always proceed with caution, because if you look at your partner and all of a sudden you're thinking, I don't think I trust this person, and they are trustworthy, now there's a new dynamic in that relationship. But on the other hand, you have to protect your asset, which is you. So
do you recommend you have a joint account and then your separate bank accounts?
yes, definitely.
And how do you utilize those accounts? So it's like joint for bills, and then, how do you do that?
Well, it just depends. Is that person trustworthy? If they are, then it can be a powerful estate planning technique, because if you have a joint account, one person dies, then all those funds automatically go to the other person, and you've probably saved yourself a few $100,000s in fees if it's a joint account. But it really, really, really just depends. And again, go back to that trusted wealth advisor and ask them for their input. What do they have to say? Because by then they will know who you each are and have a pretty good sense of a read on the scenario. And if you are with that wealth advisor, with your partner, and you've got some concerns, voice those concerns in front of everybody. Like, that is the very best time, rather than leaving that meeting with the wealth advisor and then voicing the concerns over coffee, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. It's like, well, why in the world didn't you mention that when we were? So really, really, really proceed with caution. But women are smart. And when you read my bio, the one thing that I place a tremendous amount of value on is being courageous. Like, really step up and voice your concern. It doesn't mean that you're disrespectful. It just means that you are being smart and you really want to have answers to those questions that are questions that you don't have answers to.
So do you think obviously more women are working, more women are becoming breadwinners. Husbands are now, open to staying home and doing the kids' schlepping, cooking, schoolwork, and all of that good thing. So as women grow their income, their network, and their net worth, what are some tips that you could give those women to consider in the future as they're building their wealth and their wealth? No.
Just lots of conversations, lots of communications, lots of questions, just so that you have reassured yourself that everything is in the best order it possibly can be in, both in terms of your personal relationship with your partner, and then also as it pertains to your health and your wealth with your trusted advisors. My husband and I, we have been together forever. We were married in 1969. So what's that, like 56 or whatever. And we've had, his career was completely different than mine. He was in the film business and I was in, business one place or another. So often he spent a lot of time with a green card working in LA. But at any given point in time, you've got to regroup and refocus and redirect. Where are we at? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the disappointments? What hasn't worked? What has worked? And really just have that robust dialogue on an ongoing basis and never take anything for granted. Never take anything for granted.
So I have some women that are in my circle and they are mom. They started their company as a side thing just because their kids went back to school and they weren't really wanting to go back into the workforce. They were really passionate about something. So they started these companies and those companies grew at a really high rate. So much so they were actually bringing in enough income for their husbands to stay home. On 2 different occasions, the husband did other things while she was building her business. And then now they're going to get divorced. And now the husband, in one circumstance, is wanting to get the alimony. When it's like, oh my God, I've been busting my ass. I've been working. I've been doing this. I allowed you to be able to quit your job versus both of us working. We discussed this. And they aren't going along with the plan. What are some tips or advice you would have for that woman?
Again, lots of communication because I hate the term work-life balance. I just love that. What I say is you want to focus on priorities. And if that woman is building her business so rapidly, then you kind of lose sight of everything else that's going on because now you're in the sweet spot of your life. And your partner would have agreed that that was a good idea to take that leap. But then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, how is this person feeling? This person is probably feeling less than, and you're feeling better than. And so now we've got a whole new dynamic. So that's why those conversations are so important. But anticipating, women's organizations are fabulous. There's one that I was a member of first in Canada when we had a chapter with Women Presidents Organization out of New York. The minimum is a mil, so you've already have to demonstrate that you know what you're doing, and now you're in the process of scaling your business. But getting involved with organizations like that will provide great perspective because you meet monthly in a chapter with other women business owners who are some of whom are going through some of the same situations that you are, so you can access their ideas and their resources in terms of how it was dealt with. But again, that ongoing dialogue as life unfolds is so important. And that's often something that we just don't have time for because we're busy.
Yeah, we fail to have those conversations, allow enough time. Right. And then I think, too, it's about the timing of the conversations as well.
Yep.
Like not when you're tired, not when the other one's distracted, not when you're having a fight, creating. I had one of my podcasts years ago and they had talked about creating the time for the conversations, like having a date for connection and love and passion, but then having a date to talk business with your spouse,
very smart
on a weekly basis to where you can talk about your goals, you can talk about finances, you can talk about the struggles that you're having or the needs of the family as well. So you have referenced conversation, newer times. So what are some tips that you have when having these conversations with a spouse, with a partner, that can create an open door, create the curiosity and create the courage that we need to speak up?
Well, when you first came together as a couple, you were having a lot of conversations. I mean, that's the thing that brought you together to begin with, because you had a lot of conversations about a lot of different things. And then, of course, when you come together, it's kind of like, okay, we're off. you're on that path and I'm on this path. So I guess my advice is remember back to when you first came together as a couple and what you defined as what would be ideal for the road ahead. How many kids do we want to have? When do we want to have kids? Where do we want to live? Where do we want to take our vacations? All those sorts of things. And just keep on having them. Way back when we were first married, I was getting really upset. And I said, okay, let's just take some time out and let's just write down everything that we don't like about what the other person is doing. You can add in what you do like, but what you don't like. Well, of course, I'm writing pages like the pages that because my husband had the one thing that he didn't like was how I smoked at the time. We were both smokers. But the whole process is just to keep that connection going the same way it was a connection when you first met. And life becomes so complicated, especially when you have kids and you've got careers and you've had disappointments, you've had big successes, you've had some redirects. It just becomes even more important on how to keep on talking to one another.
Right. So another thing I wanted to bring up was the giving aspect of it and philanthropy. And I worked in the nonprofit sector for a while, and it was really rewarding as well. And I felt like I worked so hard, so many hours because of the mission of the organizations that I was working with. And I've always spent a lot of time volunteering because I feel like there's so much benefit to volunteering. And on your worst days, volunteering is like the best thing to go and do because it's a great reminder that your life does have some struggle, there is some pain, but you have it better than someone else in some capacity. And there's a little bit of like abundance and gratefulness that kind of come through that process of spending that time volunteering. And I am encouraging our team members to, volunteer and give some time. They may not be able to financially give at this moment, but I do believe that even if it's $5 or something. So we're having we have an annual retreat every single year with our 30 team members. And so this year's theme is going to be abundance and generosity.
Wonderful.
And I'm really excited to get that because I don't think a lot of our team members have ever really volunteered. And for whatever reason, they haven't. And I grew up in 4-H, so it was part of my upbringing. And then I went to a private school, so you always had to volunteer to get degrees and stuff. So when it comes to giving, what are some tips or some advice that you would have for us to begin giving or get exposed or get started with giving?
Resource you can't talk.
Just participate. Just participate. If you were a 4-H'er, that's amazing. That's incredible. What did you learn when you were in 4-H?
So we learned to give ourselves and to use whatever skills that we had to give because we didn't have money. So when it came to a project, there'd be 4 or 5 of us, and everyone would talk about what their strengths are, what they could do, and then we would divide it up, and we'd all come together to do whatever it is that we were going to be doing at that moment. And we had to think about others, not ourselves. And of course, there was times that we didn't want to do what we were doing, but we had to. So I learned a lot of things through that process.
Actually, I think one key point, and I emphasize this in different ways, is life is not all about you.
Mm-hmm.
Really, when we get all caught up on ourselves, that's when we're missing out on so much. It really isn't. There's so many different aspects to giving. If you're really, really wealthy and you want to be a philanthropist, one of the key questions is, who do I want to support? And if I want to support them, how good are they at the business that they're in? So you have to be discerning as a philanthropist. But if you are a leader, the best thing you can do is find ways to help other people be leaders. So if you're having a retreat, now I know you're definitely a leader, and you're thinking about your staff, encouraging them to start thinking about how they may give, how they might get involved. I think emphasizing the world is not about you. The world is not just about you. Obviously, your number one asset is you, but in bringing that best asset forward, one of the best ways to do it is to help somebody else who could really appreciate your help. And that is in so many different ways. There's a plethora of opportunity out there. I've been a Rotarian for a very long time, and this past year I was the president of our club. And it was just fabulous. It was so much fun because it was all about the board, and it was all about how you can bring others forward to make a huge contribution that maybe they hadn't even known was possible, and then celebrating it. When I gave my year-end speech, I went through each of the members and celebrated something that each one of them had done. And, this past week we had our district governor come, and it was amazing to realize the number of members who really had come forward with something really simple that had made a big difference for us all, and then just to acknowledge it and celebrate it. So once people get started and get a taste of that giving and sharing, it's never ending.
Yes, and I'm hoping to inspire some givers for sure.
Well, you will.
Their time, and that's the thing too. So with our organization, when I first started my company, we didn't have a lot of money. So I volunteered a lot of my time at nonprofits, or we would provide like a singer, we would provide live music. That way I could have a table there. And then it got to a point we got so busy that it was easier for me just to write checks. So I was writing checks, and then there was a point where our financials were a little bit less than they were before. So I would then had to go back and then start donating my time or donating gift certificates to make up for that. So it's a seasonal thing as well.
Right.
But once again, I just think there's so much power in volunteering, and there's so much benefit. I actually got one of my jobs from volunteering. It was volunteering for a cancer organization, and I volunteered for them for about 6 or 8 months. And then they recruited me to work for their organization. And within 1 year and a half, then I was the VP of that organization. So you just never know what's going to come about. And I always think too, if you're lonely or you're looking for a community, find an organization that is something that you love. So if you like dogs, maybe it's, going and finding an organization that helps dogs. If it's nature and plants, going to like Selby Garden, something like that, or finding things that you're passionate about, because you're going to find aligned people. And that's where you're going to create really good connections and friendships, and you never know what that will lead to as well.
I think it all encompasses, beyond giving and sharing, it's just an attitude of generosity. Like being generous can happen in so many ways. Like help your coworker. Help somebody who's got too many grocery bags, help them open their car door. Just having an attitude of generosity, that gets you thinking beyond just yourself.
Yes. So I'm going to take and frame that.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, I often say there are two kinds of people that I will spend a lot of time with. People who are generous and people who have a sense of humor. And if you've ever spent time with somebody who's humorless or somebody who's not generous, forget it. I'm not spending any more time with that person at all. Because if that's their behavior, the chances are pretty good they're not going to change. So, and that's why you spend time in groups of people, personally, and then also professionally, where the majority of people are generous and do have a sense of humor.
Yeah, that's an important life component too as well. So, well, Nancy, I've learned so much from you today, and I really appreciate all the wisdom that you shared. If there was one piece of advice you could give our listeners, what would it be?
Stay vertical and keep smiling. Like stay vertical means that you've got a whole air of confidence. Like you're happy that you're upright, you're healthy, you've got your affairs in order, and then be proud of yourself because you're the person that made it happen. You're the person that put all your affairs in order to stay healthy and have your wealth plan and your protection in place. And then you can smile. Why wouldn't you smile? You're happy.
Smiling is so contagious as well. I actually just put like a sign in our front desk because we have a variety of different people that work for us, and they're all happy people. But so much what a smile can do, and people even on the phone can hear you smiling. And so, exactly, remember to smile is what it says at the front.
Well, sometimes if I'm feeling really frisky, and you're in a grocery store, or you're out, and you look at somebody and you smile at them, like look right at them and smile, they'll go, "Do I know you?"
That is the world that we've came to, which is really, really unfortunate. I know. I talk a lot about that. Even just saying hello when you walk by someone. I think sometimes everyone just wants to be on their phone and looking at the cards. I'm like, Well, not to smile.
I know. It's so much fun. Have some fun.
Right, exactly. Well, Nancy, tell our listeners how they can connect with you or where they can find you.
Okay, well, we're in a redirect. My trusted advisor is my virtual assistant who knows me inside out, and Women Worth and Wellness is 31 years old. So it's like, okay, where do we go from here? And I said to her, you know me, you know this business. You tell me what you should think we should do. Oh my goodness. She floored me with the professional presentation. So all of that is to say, we're going to be doing a bunch of different things this fall. The best way to get in touch with me is send me an email, and then you're in our database, and then you'll know. And if you send me an email, ask me whatever you want. And it's Nancy at womenworthwellness.com. Nancy, Nancy, at womenworthwellness.com. 24/7. If I don't catch you the night before, it'll be the next day. And more often than not, it will be an answer, but it will probably be a redirect. This is someone who I think you should pursue and track after to get an answer to that question. But then you're in our database, and then you'll know.
Well, I love that. Nancy, you're a complete rock star. I'm fascinated to come and visit you, so I'm going to email you so I know exactly what town you're in. The town that you're in sounds absolutely amazing. Wineries and all kinds of cool stuff. Reminds me of some other places that I've been. And once again, if you ever come to Sarasota, I invite you to come visit me. I'll give you a tour of the music school. Maybe you can come and speak to some of my teachers about wealth and wellness. Anyways, thank you so much. And for all the listeners today, thank you so much for tuning in. If you know 5 people that could benefit from this podcast, Nancy and I would love for you to send it to them. There's so much great knowledge for you and for your spouse and your family. And financial planning is a must. And it's not about when, it's not about if, it's about when. So
Correct.
We want to encourage you to take ownership of that. And once again, take ownership of your assets. And most importantly, you. Thank you so much for tuning in, Nancy. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenny, and keep up all your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Stroke It podcast. I hope you were inspired. I hope you're willing and ready to take some action. I want to encourage you to consider 5 people that could benefit from today's podcast. Super simple to share this episode. You never know who could benefit from hearing this podcast and how you could inspire them to create the change in the life that they're wanting. Cheers, and thank you so much for tuning in. Also, consider giving a